Boost for hardworking Americans. And I quote, the 99% get a bigger raise. This is a new Wall Street Journal op-ed highlighting new numbers that show much faster growth in wages and incomes than previously reported ahead of the July jobs report on Friday. So here now we've got Hadley Heath Manning from the Independent Women's Forum. Thank you for joining us. I just want to highlight the discrepancy right now, because you have the Labor Department that year over year was like a 3.1% growth, and yet the Bureau of Economic Analysis saying that that's actually much higher. Just in 2018, we saw growth of 5%. Just within the first 6 months of this year, we're seeing growth over 3%. Why is there a discrepancy?
Well, it certainly depends on if you're looking at average hourly earnings for the entire economy, if you're looking for year-over-year compensation for different subsets of the labor market. But this Bureau of Economic Analysis report that just came out is sort of revisions to previous data from Labor Department reports, not just pertaining to wage and salaries, but also pertaining to personal savings. And according to these revisions, it's actually very good news. It's indicating that basically everything we think of as a good thing, whether it's earnings or savings, those numbers are being revised upward. Meanwhile, things that we think of as not so good, say transfer receipts or how much money Americans are receiving in social benefits like welfare, dependence on government, that was actually revised down. So this recent report really puts a positive light on a lot of the numbers that we've been seeing.
So Hadley, you're focusing on the positive, which is great. In that op-ed, they also highlighted, though, the change, the dynamics in the market and how they're hiring more lower-skilled, younger workers, which means that the salaries aren't as high. Is this a new trend?
Well, certainly as we see, millions of people entering or re-entering the workforce, even because of the job growth, some of these are workers who may not have as much experience. They're younger. They're just out of high school or college. They're entering the workforce or re-entering after some time. Meanwhile, we see older workers, many in the baby boomer generation, who are ready to retire and, maybe live off of their savings or some kind of retirement pension. That certainly changes sort of the dynamics of our labor force, but that's not necessarily bad news. Of course, it depends on which type of worker you are, and the average earnings are up, average personal savings are up, all of this, even business investment is up, indicates that our economy is in a good place to sustain what we're seeing right now, which is a huge economic expansion.
Yeah, we're almost, 10 years now, and this is great news. The economy is really strong, and yet you do hear a lot of people that still complain they can't afford anything, and it's the cost of living. So we're seeing, you mentioned all of the high wages climbing higher, but is that enough, do you think, in your own opinion, based off of your experience, to offset some of the higher costs that we're seeing across the country?
Yes, I commend the Wall Street Journal editorial to people so that they can see in some of this data, when they adjust for inflation even, the real earnings and the real wage growth is still very strong. So there are particular industries I think people complain about frequently, whether it's education costs or healthcare costs. Those particular industries we have continued to see just out of control growth in spending and expenditures, not just publicly, but also out of people's pockets. Those are policy areas where I hope lawmakers will pay attention and look for ways to contain and control costs, because as we continue to see people earning more money, we want them to be able to keep that money that they earn rather than spending it on these things that we consider to be necessities like healthcare, and millions of American families are saving for education costs. Those are two areas, it's not just serendipitous, but those are two areas where the government has a very heavy hand in controlling how we spend our dollars.
The hope for all. Thank you very much, Hadley.